let's start. And I can say now, welcome to our webinar, iExperts webinar that we will discuss today, the ISO 37003, the fraud control management system. Today, we will discuss the main parts of having this management system in place to have a real established fraud control management system that will help the organization, especially the banking, all the organizations that are working in the banking sector, to establish a department for fraud control and to be apart as well from the risk management department. So at the end, we are saying that we have a great management system, great ISO standard that is provided for us from the ISO organization that is good, just provided 1 year ago, was in 2025, the 37003 Fraud Control Management System. It contains the guidelines, the plan, do, check, act for the management system, and to make sure here that you have active and in place and effective management system that will help the organization to detect the fraud on a very early stage before it simulates a risk on the customers or the business itself. So mainly when we speak about the fraud control management system, let's speak here about the main parts that we have here in our ISO 37003. We are speaking today about the great structures that we have already in our ISO, that we have this holistic approach in the ISO that is starting from having information security and having here a specific level of support from the leadership and from the upper management. Information security and risk assessment framework that is dedicated here for the fraud, assigned for the fraud risk assessment, assigned for the fraud detection. All of this here will help me to have a great controls and a great context, helping me to make sure that I have here the holistic approach and I will determine the scope of my management system. It's also including the prevention framework. Prevention framework, we have certain controls, agreed controls listed inside this ISO standard that will help us to perform these activities in a specific way and perform these activities here, and we can call it here an organized way to have this information here and to have this we call it here the most important assets that we have inside our organization. We call it here, it is the information, yes, because at the end of the day, this information can be translated into numbers, can be translated into bank account balance at the end of the day. So have this information safe, have this information here, and have all the ecosystem here safe from fraud. I think it is one of the main priorities for all the people that are working in the banking sector. So at the end, we can call it here real controls. This real controls, it's there and implemented, and we can call it here, it is a great part in presenting here this management system with the full control list, starting from planning, do here. We are speaking here about the controls, find, check, act. Check here for any deviation and act. And also we include here, we have here the detection mechanisms, it's included, and we will include all the detection mechanism. It is very similar, by the way, to any management systems that you have established inside your organization before. So at the end, we can call it here a great management system that is established. And once it got established here, and you will have the BDCA C here, which means a check here, including the internal audit. The internal audit is extremely important, and the red flags as well. And also, we will speak about the transaction monitoring, every transaction monitoring. And it goes without saying, the AI and the machine learning, it is playing here a very great and important role to have here all of this transactions reviewed, managed, and any fraud detected on time, and also including here how you can make a reporting for the needed or for the authorities to have everything here in place. So we can call it here a great framework, including the detection mechanism that we will go in details in each one. In addition to that, the response and recovery. Response and recovery, extremely important, because this is here very important to have in the response and recovery. You have to have specific, we call it here certain requirements or certain here reporting forms, certain reporting cycles, certain reporting mechanism for any fraud that you detect. For example, in the money world here, we call it here the suspicious activity reporting. Any suspicious activity reporting here, it must be reported to the financial authorities. Yes, we know that we have many financial authorities in Europe, in Middle East, that require to make some sort of reporting immediately after detecting the incidents. Nowadays, we have DORA in Europe that is required to make some sort of reporting for the major incidents, but DORA speaking major incident in generic, not just the fraud. Today, here in the framework of ISO 37003, we are speaking here about the as we call it here, the fraud reporting here for any suspicious activity. And we will detect here, and we will see how we can detect such issues and such mistakes in our organization or any financial system that we have. So at the end of the day, this is the response and recovery. So we can call it here what we can here have, and what we have, Ahmed, here in the ISO 37003, we can call it here in this FCMS, the Fraud Control Management System. We have here a great management system. It is, again, it's well connected with the risk management, the 37,000, the compliance management, 37,301, and of course, the mother or the main member of this family, the 37 here, the 37001, the anti-peri-peri for that is required as well in many organizations that want to make sure that we have clean hands, that we have here everything is controlled without any fraud, without any, we can call it here black activities or something like that. So to make sure that we have a great money system that is free from the fraud, from the corruption, we have to utilize this ISO standards together. In addition to that, the ISO standard, as you know, can be customized, it can be implemented for a big organization with a lot of departments, with a bank that is like Barclays in the UK, a great bank, many branches around Europe, around UK, around North Africa. So at the end of the day, we can build this management system here for this bank. While when we speak about the other organization. It can be small organization, local bank with just the main branch and two other branches, small fintech organization, or a small company that is working here in insurance or something like that. So at the end of the day, you have to determine what will be the fraud, the scope of the fraud, and what will be the coverage part to make sure that you are compliant with the regulatory requirements, that you are on the right path and right way to be on the, to have here all the controls in place and to have this efficient management system. In addition to that, as you know, in the ISO standards, usually we are saying that it is a great standard that can be applied in all sectors, in all sizes, profit, non-profit organization. At the end of the day, we are saying that we have a great statistics nowadays that the rise in fraud cases in 2024 got increased, and we can say that we got 30 millions of pounds stolen daily in UK alone. Can you imagine something like this? And at the end of the day, having this fraud control management system in place can prevent these people from having this, we can call it here, gray or black activities here, or reduce this risk, the fraud risk. By the way, part of this management system, we call it here something, we call it here fraud risk assessment, specific risk assessment for the fraud itself. So we can say as well that this is the ISO. When we speak about the standard itself, we can explore here a great structure inside this level. Again, it is the same 10 clause structure. The number 4, it is the context of the organization. Maybe somebody say, Ahmed, I remember that I saw this before inside ISO 27001. I saw this before in ISO 22301. I saw this before in the privacy management system 27701. Yes, you saw this before because it is the same HLS, high level structure, 10 clause, and maybe including the controls, or the controls can be annexed according to the ISO, but this is the structure of the ISO. In other words, maybe you can use the same management systems that you have and apply above this management system here, this great standard, this great fraud control management system. In addition to that, remember that a lot of organizations nowadays, or a lot of regulators nowadays, they are enforcing their clients, the banking sector or something like that, to follow specific requirement. For example, here in Egypt, the Central Bank of Egypt enforced and asked all the banks here to have the fraud management system and to have the fraud department and establish fraud department here to report here for the CRO. So at the end of the day, it is repeated here from country to country. It is repeated here, and you can see here a lot of organizations that are requiring, or a lot of regulators are requiring every day to have this management system in place, or have this departments. But as we mentioned, and as we usually we call it here, as we advise from professional point of view here, to have this international standards to fulfill the requirements of the regulators. I think in this way you can make it in a very, very professional way. So having this management systems in place, I think it will not just fulfill the regulatory requirements. No, it will give extra level of controls or extra level of assurance that you are managing and implementing the fraud control well. So yes, it is the same here structure, but remember, there are of course some differences here. When we speak about the scope, this is the scope of the FCMS, the fraud control management system. Remember that we have something, we call it here fraud risk assessment. If you remember in the privacy, for example, we have the privacy impact assessment. If you remember, and this is in the ISO 27701. So it is similar to a risk assessment, but it's similar more to be impact assessment, not just risk assessment. So we have also risk assessment in the information security. We can have, and we can use the same risk assessment of the information security and add a part, a specific portion for the fraud risk assessment, update our risk assessment or be a part of our risk department. So this will be a great idea here that you have up and running and a great management system and risk management department, so you can work together with this department by including your fraud risk assessment. Number 5, and it goes without saying, without upper management support, I think it will be here a big problem here for many organizations to establish any system. So we highly recommend to have, we call it here, leadership support. We have to have, we call it here, top management commitment to support here the fraud control management system. And we recommend here, according to the ISO 37003, to have a dedicated unit, dedicated center, dedicated department, dedicated team that will work inside your organization just for fraud control function. We call it here fraud control function. So it is very important to have this function here and have internal audit function. Ahmed, I can outsource this for another company. Yes, you can outsource it. Even its name is internal audit function. Yeah, I can outsource my internal audit function. So at the end of the day, it is something yours to discuss and to see here what will be the most important for you. The first part in the PDCA plan, do, check, act. The first part here, it is planning. With having here great planning here, with having here good planning here by take the first actions here to detect, prevent the fraud risk, make a great and we can call it here, based of course on feasibility study here, feasible action plan and project plan to be in place for fraud management system. And remember, you will never be able to establish a system like this without a great planning here for the change. If you didn't make a good planning here for the changes that you will need inside your organization, maybe the benefits that you are expecting from getting from this management system, it will not be at the top level, or you achieve the maximum benefits here by having these controls in place. So remember that you must understand that you must make a good planning here for this, make good planning here for the changes here and being approved without any violation for the other frameworks with the other management system. For example, here, maybe some people think that we will not or we will not show specific level of respect for the change management. It's a part that is a part of the ISO 20000-1 part 1 of the 20,000 ISO management system, the SMS, the service management system. No, we have to respect this change management system. We highly recommend to not having a dedicated or standalone change management system. No, we recommend here to have the change management system and the change management that exists inside your departments and inside your organizations. So even it is a dedicated department or it's a part of the IT or a part of the operation. So you have to respect this. Again, when we build a framework, we are not destroying the others. When we build or when we add here a discipline on management system, some controls like the ISO 37003, we are carefully adding the new controls without interrupting, without here destroying the other management systems that is running inside the organization. It must work like the puzzle pieces behind each other's. It must work behind the other one. So they must work behind each other's and avoid having these issues and avoid having here this problems that is happening between the two management system when you apply a new one. I think it makes sense. Don't forget the support. Support, it is very similar to the popular frameworks, the most popular frameworks that we know. Again, it is the same 5 sections that we have: the resources, the competency. We have to have the competent people. We have to have the skilled people. We have to have the fraud specialists, people that are working in this organization. And remember, nowadays, the fraud detection, it is not like 40 years ago. In 40 years ago, when it was in the 80s of the 1980s or example, something like this, there is no computer systems on this time, or even if there is a computer system, it is not like the current computer system. And nowadays we are in the era of the AI. So now I need certain skills in the AI for fraud detection in these people. We have to have these people in place. We have to have awareness and the training program. It is one of the requirements. Communication, clear communication plan, including the escalation metrics and the communication metrics here. In addition to that, documented information. So we recommend, if you have a clear here management system or standard management system, you have to include this documented information as well. Number 8, this is the heart here of the ISO 37003, the operation. We have here 4 pillars: fraud control fundamentals, preventive detective response controls. Again, fraud control fundamentals, preventive detective response controls. We will get into a lot of details inside this one, inside this operations, but remember that we can call this part as the real controls. So do here, it is, we call it here the real controls of the ISO, of this ISO standard. Not like ISO 27001. 27001, the controls here, it is exist here, and it's exist here, and another, we call it here another annex, or 27002, another control standard, or another standard 27002, or it can be the annex of 27001. But today, here we have these controls are in place, are in the heart of the operation. Plan, do the operation here. Do, number 8, the operation. It is 4 pillars, the controls. 9, it goes without saying that it's repeated again here, the internal audit. The internal audit 9.2, of course, monitoring, measurement analysis, the metrics. 9.2, the internal audit for the fraud control management system. 9.3, the management review, the yearly or biannual management review. But remember, we have here extra one. 9.4, reporting for governing body and risk function. It can be dual reporting. This is for the quality of the fraud management system. Maybe I will be make a specific reporting for the risk management, for the risk function, and for the upper management. So 2 reporting lines. Finally, the improvement. The improvement here is extremely important, because once you discover, once you discovered here, and once we got some sort of non-conformity discovered, we have to get some action plan and make the enhancement and so on. So at the end, we can call here, this is the main structure here of this one. Again, that the ISO 37003 here, it is depending on the plan, do, check, act. Plan, do, check, act. Plan, do, check, act. That is will enhance, that you must here, you must enhance it. Enhance year after year, day after day, month after month. You have to have this in place. Otherwise, you are getting some sort of certification to say, yay, we got certified. Let's celebrate that we are getting here our surveillance, second surveillance for XYZ certification. No, it is not working like that. We need here real achievement on the ground. So the real achievement here, it will never happen without having here graph like this. Graph increasing the quality over the time. Otherwise, you are just sorting some paper and getting your certification. And we agree that this is not the best approach to have here the certification here. Remember that this is 8. We said that we have 4 pillars. First of all, fraud control fundamental. It goes without saying that you must start based on risk assessment, fraud risk assessment here. You have to be able to get some sort, we call it here risk recognition, how you will be able to detect that this is really a risk without having here predefined criteria. So we have here to define here specific, as we call it here, some fraud patterns. This pattern here will work as something to guide me, to help me that this risk here is recognized as a risk, some sort of tracking, monitoring for the environment. We usually hate to have separated islands that everybody working in his or her island without coordinating with others. So having here risk management in InfoSec, credit risk management, fraud risk management. Why? Let's have one risk department. We call it here ERM, Enterprise Risk Management. We highly recommend to have here 31,000 framework. 31,000 framework here. This is a great risk management framework that we have to have, or we recommend to have in our organization. In addition to that, you have to define the fraud risk appetite statement. Maybe some persons in the fraud here, it's a pattern. Some persons here sending here a request for a refund, $1, $1, $1, $1. So we cannot say that it's a big risk, but if it exceeds a specific amount, so it can be a risk. But this can be a test. So at the end of the day, you have to define here your risk appetite. What is the accepted level of risk? And also the risk tolerance, the maximum risk that you can tolerate inside the fraud. Remember, without names for any countries, but it happened for a very poor country in Asia, that one fraud happened for the central bank of this country. It was just one incident, fine. What happened for this central bank? For this central bank of this poor company here in Asia, poor country in Asia. What happened for them? Just one transaction. The hackers was able. Some of them were able to transfer $4 billion. Maybe it was everything in this. It was all the foreign currency in this central bank of this Asian country. So from this happened, I think, within the last 10 years. So have something like this. Of course, this is something very, very high risk. Maybe it hit their risk tolerance for this country. Maybe a lot of people dead because it was about, they were about to use this money here to build the schools, to build hospitals, to enhance the life of these people, but this money gone because of fraud. So you have to define here the risk appetite here, losing here $20 different, I think, from losing here $20 million. as you know, of course, and I do believe that everybody agrees with me. Of course, you have to have the proactive control systems. You have to have the fraud control, the fraud culture here assessment, and the integrity here framework. The policies must be in place. I don't like here to have just policies. It is ink on paper. No, we don't like that. We want to have here a real and in place systems and real and in place here fraud, anti-fraud policies, fraud detection mechanism, avoiding conflict of interest here, not just ink on paper. No, we need it to be implemented and managed well inside this organization. Clear accountability, we have to assign here the clear accountability of the fraud, and to have here the board, to have here the CRO, and have the fraud function. In addition to that, from the preventive control, these are the practical here exercises. Remember that any customer, any counterpart here, any counterpart due diligence, we call, you have to have know your customer, know your business, know your transaction. Know your transaction. Yeah, every transaction that is happening in my SWIFT, in my local scheme, in my network, I must be aware that this transaction in my software, even in the software, you must be aware of this transaction. There's nothing it named untraceable transactions. What happened? Because why this fraud happened? Because of the untraceable transaction, untraceable chain of people here, and so it jumped from person to a person and so on. Segregation of duties in payment processing and approval. Doesn't make sense to have both on the same person. Transaction limits. Yeah, it makes sense to have transaction limits. Why to allow here one transaction to transfer $4 billion? Why? You have to set specific here limits. Dual controls, maker checker, 4 eyes concepts. All of this must be great here. In the PCI DSS, we are requiring here to have something, we call it here employees, background check. Now, background screening and ongoing vetting here, it is extremely important here. So have here screening, have here some persons to make really check here of the background of these people here. I think it's mandatory here to be there. Fraud awareness training for the staff, for everybody that is working on this system, and also for the upper management. In addition to that, the vendor, the third-party onboarding controls, as you witnessed here in last years, we saw a lot of attacks that has happened just because of one supply chain attack. Supply chain attack, if it is a company good established here by certain people just to hack you, and they will be providing you with free of charge services, low-cost services, or something like this, just to attract you, just to hack you, third party, and the vendor third party. And remember, in DORA, I think that we have discussed this in our webinar before, that in DORA, you have to, we have one of the 5 pillars of DORA that you have to make a great check for the, as we call it here, the third party risk management, third-party risk management, because a lot of issues can happen from your third parties. Pre-employment and ongoing integrity checks. It doesn't make sense that one person, Jack, is the doer, fine, or the maker, while his wife, Sarah, is a checker. No, we need to make sure that what is the relationship between the employees, between the persons that are working here in this systems and so on, again, to prevent the fraud. Detection here, this is welcome to the new era of the AI. AI here will build a very important role to enhance, we call here RTTM, the real-time transaction monitoring. I'm not speaking about packet filtration or a packet monitoring. No, we are speaking here about that transaction, every transaction monitoring here. Remember that machine learning, AI, learning mode. All of this will be applied on any system that is working on flow. The anomaly detection here are based on the behavior. Some persons transfer here, for example, here every month, fine, $10, $10, $10, $10. While in one day, they transferred here $20,000. I think this is here. We have to have a flag about this. The profile of this customer here, fine, saying that his or her income across the year is not exceeding, for example, here $10,000. But in one day, there is one transaction with $1 million. All of this can be, or many transactions, the total of them, it's $1 million. I think this is here the behavioral analysis and also the biometrics and the way that you use to sign in. Some banks till now allow you to use using two-factor authentication. And in case if you lost this two-factor authentication, you can sign using one factor. I see. Something you know, something you know. Yeah, if you have to sign first of all with something you know, password, something you have token, physical token. But if you don't like to sign with the physical token, I will ask you a question, something you know, security question, and your password. Then you can get inside. So at the end of the day, remember, maybe after you get inside, I will not allow you to make any transaction. No transfer. No changing for the passwords. No change for the major function. Again, all of this happening from that real risk assessment on the ground that will be reflected by a way or another, that will be reflected on your quality, on your management system, on your application. All of this indicate something. We call it here a great or efficient secure software development lifecycle. Yes, it's starting from here, starting from secure software development lifecycle, starting from the risk management. In addition to that, you have from the detection, you have to have network link analysis. Fine, you have to have internal audit and targeted fraud testing specific. Maybe you can make some testing here just for fraud. In addition to that, you have to establish here specific hotline just for fraud detection. And it must be anonymous, must be protected, because maybe I noticed fraud, but if I reported this fraud, it will be the end of my employment, the end of my specific relationship with a specific company, was the end of my relationship with my customer, or something like that. So maybe I will think twice. But if you told me, Ahmed, wait, we can here let you make a reporting and you will appear as anonymous here. You will not appear with your identity. So it will be more easier for me, I think, the decision here of having this reporting here. Remember also the staff management reporting channels, you have to have this. In addition to that, remember that we have certain organizations like the Financial Service Information Sharing and Analysis Center, fine, and also the CFAS in the UK Fraud Prevention Service. They maybe support you or ask you if you exist in the UK to make a reporting in case of fraud for them. And this is applying in a lot of countries, by the way. The response, the fourth pillar here, that you have to have fraud incident triage. You have to triage here, detect, identify, notify, detect here the fraud, identify it's real fraud here, and start to make the notification, and including here the severity and the classification here. In addition to that, the evidence reservation, building a chain of custody, and the suspicious activity reporting here, and it must be automatically when you go to in the heart of the management system itself saying that it must be automatically. We will not depend on some persons that will make here the reporting while they are, we can call them, they are on vacation today, they are off, they have some emergency, so we didn't make the reporting. This reporting must be happening on, we call it here, on automatic basis. Nobody can stop this reporting. Nobody has a control to stop here this reporting here by his or her hand. Fine, it must be managed here automatically. A lot of another controls like account freeze, like transaction reversal, like the asset recovery must be there, in addition to have with your HR a clear, established, communicated, documented disciplinary actions and legal procedures. Even the CEO was involved in this fraud, it will be reported. SOC 1 audit report, SOX compliance that got established 24 years ago in 2002 by Mr. Sarbanes and Mr. Oxley. Victim notification, yeah, and communication management. Remember, this can be reflected with another standard. For example, in the PCI, if there is PCI, you lost some credit card. Remember that you have to report this within 48 hours. If you lost some personal information and in the scope of the GDPR, according to your country, remember, according to your country, in GDPR, you have to report this within 72 hours. So maybe it's one incident, but it has different reflections on many standards. Finally, post-incident review and lesson learned. Let me remind you, if you have any question, write down this on the chat box now so we can answer in the last 10 minutes of this webinar. So these are the 4 pillars here. Remember that we recommend here this structure that to make the head of fraud or the fraud control function here to report here to the CRO, Chief Risk Officer. We highly recommend to be a part of the risk department here. Remember the fraud prevention unit that is including here all these activities. Remember the pillar, this one, 8.1, fraud control fundamental, fraud control fundamental, including having some preventive controls in place. All of this here, this is the fraud prevention unit must be there. Fraud detection and the analysis here, including here the machine learning here, and also we call it here the transactions here management, and we call it here any service that you have in your organization here. So any logistics that is will help to have a full and completed here transaction. So at the end of the day, you have to have this fraud detection and analysis. In addition to that, the fraud investigation, risk governance, and fraud technology and data, including the AI and the machine learning. So we have to have all of these functions working in one function, reporting to the CRO. The fraud reporting, the fraud department, when we speak about the fraud department that is reporting to the CRO, we can say that at the end of the day, we recommend to have some sort of daily activities like the SAR, feelings initiated, the loss incurred here, if any issue here happened inside this organization, what is the current level of risk, the severity of the incidents here, and the high severity cases here opened and escalated, and the amount of the fraud alerts that we got across the days. In addition to that, you have to have weekly reporting for the fraud detection rate, the false positive trend analysis, good trend analysis here playing a very important part here, very important role to let me see here which seasons here, let me say that after which change here, I got a lot of fraud attacks what are the indicators, what are the triggers of the attacks and so on. Quarterly, also, you must make the continuing of the trend analysis here and the maturity self-assessment for the fraud control management system. Don't think that you will start with level 5 maturity assessment or maturity here. No, maybe you will work on level 1 and level 2 for a period of time, then move to 3 gradually. Finally, we recommend here to have some sort of KPIs, KPIs, key risk indicators, key performance indicators, some financial like the gross fraud loss, the net fraud loss here, the fraud to revenue ratio here, the cost of fraud operation. Fine. So it's very important here to be there from financial perspective, because we are addressing with this ISO standard the financial organization. The operational, the alert to investigation conversion ratio, maybe the majority of alerts are false positive or false negative, the worst. Mean time to detect, the mean time to respond, what are the differences between both? If you have something like this in business continuity, please please differentiate between both. Yeah, maybe time to detect here a problem in the server down, compared with the mean time to respond. It is X and Y in the business continuity. While here it is 0.1 from this X, 0.2 from this Y. So at the end of the day, the operational can be different here, because today here, the false positive rate, the detection here, the percentage of fraud detection here rates, the model hit rate here, the undetected fraud estimation, again, this is that dark bar. Fine, but you must here have another eyes to help you to detect this bar, and the reporting here ratio, and the persons that make this reporting here. You can see as well with the compliance, with the level of the compliance here with your local requirements and the local regulation. I think this is here extremely important to be there, to be managed here, fine, in a very clear KPIs. So we recommend here to have many lines. First line here is the business line. So they are own and manage the fraud risk. Second here, PA, it is the fraud control function here. That is set the governing part, or set here the managing here the investigation, or managing here, we call them second line of investigation. Fine. So this can be very important to have this in this way. And the third line here, it can be your internal audit department. Your internal audit department can be an extra level of assurance that your fraud control function is functioning well, and extra level that there is no coordination here to close the issues or close the fraud, or there is wrong procedures happened here, or wrong procedures here followed between the business lines, the operation, and the fraud control function. I can control this by the third layer, we call it here internal audit. And remember also, maybe you need here to communicate with your central bank. Maybe you need here to some sort of on-site supervision or on-site visits or something like that. CFAS or industrial fraud data here to be shared according here to the regulation in your organization, or according to the regulation here that are controlling you in your country. Maybe you need some sort of support from your vendors or from your external auditors and so on. When we speak about the plan, we recommend that this plan here, it can take here we can call it here, it can be four phases. First, the foundation and governance here by establishing section number 4 and section number 5. 4, it is the context of the organization. Let's determine here the context of your organization, the context of what you have inside your organization, and this is extremely important part to establish here the main issues, or the main here we call it here context, risk appetite, perform a fraud risk assessment in this phase. And then we will go to the second phase here to go to the detailed here risk assessment and the prevention, to take here the actions, the controls that we said that we have to apply here to reduce this risk, and apply behind the preventive controls, make the designing for the implementation, make the change, develop your business case, and make sure your upper management will approve that. They will never approve that without a clear and a great business case that will help us to have something like this in place. Phase number 3, it is the detection and investigation. Detection and investigation here by establishing here the models that we have based on AI, machine learning. Implementation here for reporting, fraud reporting, awareness that we have specific line for fraud reporting, awareness that you privacy is protected. If you made some sort of reporting, please report, make the people aware of reporting. All of this are extremely important and must be there. In addition to that, performance and continuous improvement. This will not happen without 9 and 10 check, act, plan, do, check, act, internal audit, management review. Have some certain KPIs in place for your upper management. Show this for them in the upper management. So we can call this as the implementation roadmap in these 4 cases. Thank you very much for your time. I think this is the time for the questions. I hope you enjoyed this webinar. I hope it is very clear for you. So let me start with the first question from Mr. Adil Yahya. What indicators should organization monitor to identify early warning signs of fraud? Yes, inside that fraud itself, control management system, the fraud control management system, we call it here, these are indicators of the fraud. Fine, indicators. This is, if you remember here, we have mentioned this in the behavioral analysis. Yes, this in the detection here. So my answer for you, it is 8.3. 8.3, the detection. So all of this detection, fine, can be here in your internal audit. It's a part. Internal audit, it's auditing the fraud function itself. It's audit the business line and the coordination between them. So the network, the anomaly detection here, fine, according with many parameters. So I hope I answered your question. Fine, my answer, my straightforward answer for your question, it's 8.3. Another question from Salah. Mr. Salah, yes. How should organizations balance prevention control versus detective control? Actually, both must work back to back here. Both must be there. For example, here you have to, for example, for fire, the risk of having fire, you are preventing people from smoking on the airplane. That's correct. This is preventive control. In addition to that, inside the lavatory of the airplane, you have some detection, smoke detectors. So you have to have both. You have to make some sort of awareness. Before you fly, we are telling you that this flight here, it is non-smoking flight. And even, for example, here, the electronic cigarettes, it's prohibited on this airplane. It's a control itself. We call this as deterrent control. If you are thinking twice to go inside the lavatory and start to smoke, especially in a very long airplane, in the very long flights here, we are traveling to US 14 hours or something like that. So we are giving you controls. So it is a mix between controls, detection, detection here, controls, preventive controls here, deterrent controls, compensating controls, directive controls, recovery controls. And recovery controls, I think here, this is, we can call it here as a combination of controls are in place. So I hope I answered your question. Mr. Mustafa Hamad, where do fraud controls and InfoSec controls overlap, and how do we avoid duplication? There is no duplication because in the ISO 27001 itself, there is no fraud management or fraud detection framework. It does not exist, according to my knowledge, it's not exist 100%. What I didn't work with in the 27,000 family. I'm speaking about the family. We didn't work before with one framework for fraud, but in the 37 family, we have this member. For the we call it here overlapping. It's not overlapping because the information security risk management, it's seeing the risk that is surrounding CIA in the risk in the ISMS, in the information security management system, while the here, when we speak about that fraud, we are speaking about fraud risk here. We are here more related to the fraud. Remember here that I have to mention, it's very important here, as I mentioned here during the sessions, that the central bank, for example, here, I think it is 1 week or 2 weeks ago, central bank in Egypt, they asked, they forced all the banks to have fraud department here. So we highly recommend here to have this ISO 37003 here in place. So this is your most safe way or most straightforward way to have this international standard implemented inside your organization. So I think this will be a great milestone and a great and this will be reflected with a great impact on your fraud control and the fraud prevention inside your financial system, regardless you are a bank, you are a financial entity. So we highly recommend to have something like this. I hope you enjoyed the session. I hope it was useful for you. Thank you very much for attending today. And let me remind you to visit us on iExperts.uk. Go to the webinars page. Try to subscribe just to get the next week webinar. We have webinars every week. Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the session and see you in our next webinars. Thank you. Bye-bye. Salam alaikum.